Morning, our delegates. So we have an exciting number of attendees and people are still coming. And it is my absolute pleasure to moderate such a topical panel today. We will be talking about how the real estate industry is being served by technology, especially in the context of office and residential space, and how it is being served helping tenants in and out of buildings. My name is Valentina Shigoyan. I am managing partner of Reach UK. Reach UK is a scale-up program for technology startups launching into real estate world. So it is in fact my daily job working with the industry and technology companies, connecting the two worlds together. So it should be very natural for me to moderate today's panel because we have 4 amazing speakers today. We have 2 representatives from the industry, Victoria Steventon, who is Head of Property Management at Derwent London, and Daniela Bayles, Chief Operating Officer at Quintain Limited. And we do have 2 representatives of the real estate technology world. We have with us today Warrick Swift, Property Inspect, Commercial Director of Property Inspect, and Tomas Selva, who's the CEO of Myrodomo SmartPoint. Before I ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, a very quick note on housekeeping, and that is to our audience, and the attendees number is still growing, as I can see. So that's everyone who wants to ask questions, please do not wait, ask them at any point in time. However, I would strongly encourage everyone to use Q&A function for this, because anything posted on chat, unfortunately, has a very high likelihood to be missed. So again, any questions that our attendees, our audience wants to ask their panelists today, please put them through Q&A function, and this way we will all see it and we'll be able to address it on the spot. I will probably repeat it one more time later. Anyhow, so let us start with introductions. So I will ask first Victoria and Daniela to introduce themselves, and each of you to answer very basic question, which is in their headline of our webinar today. How do you use technology and are you being served? Victoria, please, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Valentina. Good morning. So I'm Victoria Steventon. As said, I'm the Head of Property Management at Derwent London. For those that don't know, we're a central London REIT. We own and manage 5.6 million square feet of office space across central London. We have a wide range of occupiers from digital technology, media, through to financial services. So we've got a wide-reaching tenant base. In my role as responsible for property management, obviously technology is playing a huge part in that, and looking at how we improve our services to our tenants and how we make our buildings more efficient as we run. And I think over the last 20 years, we've seen digital transformation across all industries. So it's really only a matter of time before the built environment is going to catch up. You know, smart buildings and the concept of digital buildings have been important for a very long time. And I think from my perspective, apologies if you can hear the siren, by the way. From my perspective, you know, the technology is now actually catching up with the requirements, and we're now in a position where it's giving property owners the options to effectively digitize our buildings. For me, that means that we can see better efficiency across the board. It gives us the ability to provide better experience for our customers and our end users, and make our management services a lot more proactive. It's also going to play a huge part for us in the delivery of net zero carbon and that agenda across all landlords, and how we're going to work more collaboratively with our occupiers. And it's a data-led approach which is going to help us tackle energy usage and carbon output, and whilst covering off those really big key issues such as wellness and well-being, which I think are now thrown into the spotlight more than ever.
Daniela, please, it's over to you now.
Okay, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I joined Quintain Living approximately 8 months now ago, having spent the last 30 years in the US multifamily. So felt like a great opportunity to come over and be part of a sector that's growing so quickly in another country. So Quintain, the parent company, is the developer who is building out Wembley Park, which is obviously on the same grounds as Wembley Stadium. So approximately. By the time we're done building out the estate, we'll have about 7,000 residential units. But in addition, we have a 7-acre park going in. There's still the SSE arena. There's tons of shopping and retail and food and beverage, and across the 85-acre estate, we've actually created a pretty amazing neighborhood. So it's been just a joy to be a part of. And I feel like Quintain Living and Quintain in general are both very technology forward companies. So that's been a really interesting journey as well. And very much like Victoria mentioned, I think technology has been creating efficiencies for residential for a long time as well. And it's just kind of accelerated now, you know, and growing very quickly. We have things like resident portals that allow work orders to be placed online, social space bookings, even event RSVPs, resident event RSVPs are done by resident app. Rent is paid by direct debit, package rooms are automated, leases are signed electronically, and we have now even implemented an end-to-end online leasing journey, which includes the ability to view 3D model, which takes you all the way down into the actual apartment that you're renting so that you can view the apartment, apply for the apartment, sign your lease without ever stepping foot on site until you pick up your keys to move in. And as you can imagine, during the pandemic, that's been kind of a game changer for us from a technology perspective and still being able to serve our customers. We're now looking at things like self-guided tours, which will allow customers to tour at the time of their choosing rather than limiting to office hours. And all of these things I think are incredibly important for our efficiency from a staffing model perspective, but also delivering information and services in the way the customer wants to receive it. What it has done, though, is to remove many of the touch points that we had in place, which allowed us to create relationships with the residents. And so it's requiring us to find more innovative ways to surprise and delight our customers. But I think all of these types of innovations are evolutionary and are a natural response to the customer wanting more done faster on their timetable and efficiently as possible. And while COVID might have accelerated some of these things, I definitely think that they're here to stay. And then I think it's up to us to find a way, you know, to set ourselves apart from a service perspective and how to create those relationships and be memorable.
Thank you, Daniela. Awesome. Tom, Warrick, moving to you. So I hear Victoria mentioning that technology is catching up and is finally providing solutions. But is it really technology, or the question rather, how do you see real estate industry from your angle actually engaging with technology, and what has been changing over the past 12 to 18 months? Tom, if you could start with you, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tomas Selva, the CEO of SmartPoint. For those of you that don't know us, we're the widest private network in offices and residential buildings for the servicing of 200 different services from your city, all available via smart lockers, and also the universal delivery of every single product that you could buy via any e-commerce delivered via any courier. So that's as a quick intro and answering your question, Valentina. As a segue, what we've seen in the last 12 months is a rapid change. It's been sort of strange first 3 months, I have to say, between 2020 March and that summer. Very slow. There was not a very good understanding whether there were structural changes or there were temporary changes. But what we've seen is large portfolios address the issue of having to become more competitive, both on the residential and office sector, to provide not only tenants, but the end users with a better building, so that in the eyes of the principal tenants, in the eyes of those that actually pay the rent, that those tenants will feel that it's a better solution than when they are working from home, or it's a better solution to have at home, so that they can feel that they're part of a changing industry, an industry that has to catch up with many others in terms of staying at the forefront of innovation.
Awesome, thank you. Warrick, tell us, what does Property Inspect do, and how you see real estate approach to innovation changing over the past year or so?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Valentina. Good morning, everyone. Well, PropTech has been revolutionizing real estate globally, and technology has rapidly changed over the past 18 months. We've increased adoption in new technologies and collaboration, smart buildings filled with sensors and tracking employees, to software that monitors leasing documents. New technologies increasingly being incorporated across commercial real estate industry. I suppose, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I'm the commercial director for Property Inspect, which is an award-winning complete end-to-end platform for effective property management and compliance to the real estate industry. I mean, we currently operate in over 40 countries, and our software is designed to produce professional property reports and periodic inspections, building audits, risk assessments, and more for various industries. We have been working with a vast number of clients like Amazon, Airbnb, governments and large property management companies such as Belvoir Group, Property Franchise Group, which has enabled our service offering to be more versatile and scale to any business requirements. But I suppose the question would be for us, so how has our technology changed and adapted to service tenants and customers? To give you an example, let's rewind back to March 2020 when COVID first hit in the UK. I know estate agents were told to obviously close and to stay home. And as part of regular client meetings, we met with Dexter's in London and to kind of see how we can assist with their 70 offices. And flat out, they said, you know, their concern was how can they complete fitness for human habitation reports and conduct inspections remotely? Following the meeting and a quick deployment to our in-house team of developers, we were able to design a new solution allowing property inspection reports to be assigned directly to the residents and tenants to complete predefined compliance reports or conduct virtual live inspections. Now they are completed, you know, physical inspections and time and costs are reduced by 50% annually, and our clients' tenants completed over 18,000 self-assessment reports in the first 6 months. The industry soon established that remote live inspections was more an efficient way to complete an inspection, diagnose, or even fix maintenance issues without having to send a contractor. That benefits both the tenant and the property owner. Now, this same technology was applied to our projects in the United States, assisting government municipalities helping their rapid rehousing programs to reduce numbers of homelessness due to the pandemic. And our software allows these cities to cut time and costs of identifying and adding eligible units to their rapid rehousing programs to improve housing quality standards at scale, to provide effective property management within our software. And working with All Chicago in the United States, we solved their inspection problems and adding eligible properties at scale during the pandemic for their rapid rehousing program. We managed to cut their time about 50%, and what was originally 500 properties they wanted to onboard is now over 2,000 properties since July. I mean, the definition of PropTech refers to any kind of technology that uses automation, AI, IT, Internet of Things that is developed for the property industry, which aims and allows property owners, managers and landlords to manage their assets with more efficiency, ease and flexibility. And PropTech solutions work to create a better experience for buildings and tenants. And at the heart of what we do at Property Inspect, our passion is technology and software for a sustainable and streamlined future.
Awesome. No, that's extremely helpful. And it's interesting to hear that all 4 of the panelists agree that real estate becomes more customer-centric. Daniela, if you don't mind, to start with you this time. My question would be, when it comes to tenant engagement, your communication with tenants, hearing their feedback, what are the key needs of today of the real estate industry and your company when it comes to property management? And where do you actually see blind spots, where you wish there was a technology and the tool on the market that can address their issue, and where you cannot find it yet?
Well, I'm going to start by making a plea. I feel like as an industry, one of the big blind spots that we have as operators is shared information. And I think in the short time that I've been here in the UK, I've found that most BTR operators are reluctant to share even the most basic of information. And it's taken a long time, I think, in the US for the operators to understand how much power there is in the sharing of that information and learnings. And so from a technology perspective, I'll make a pitch for something as simple as a market survey. There are products on the market that make this process so much easier. And I'd love to, just kind of make a pitch for everybody to join me on a platform called Radix. I'm sure there'll be many others out there, but it makes the process so simple. It's a great product that allows you to see trends in the market because it captures information over time. Anyone who's on the platform, it will actually scrape information from their system. So it's an automatic, kind of data collection service. If your comps are not on the platform, a simple email to them will give them the ability to enter the information, and then in return for that, they'll get a copy of the survey. So there's a little bit of a win-win in there. The other thing I think that's maybe not as much as a blind spot, but I think something that's coming will help open up some of those blind spots and clear up some of that, kind of mystery around it, is yield optimizers or rental rate optimizing systems. I think that's something that's going to be here pretty quickly. I think there's already one or two systems that are kind of entering into the market, but I think those are definitely, something that's kind of on its way, and from an industry perspective, will change the way we're doing business for sure.
Awesome, thank you. Victoria, what would you want to add from your perspective and with the kind of office operator hat on?
Okay, I think for us, looking at this from an operational perspective, the interlink between the technology that's provided and the data that comes out of that, and how that's actually been interpreted at site level and through the buildings. And I think there's still issues around interoperability of the systems and system compatibilities, the building management systems and the software that works with those and how that interacts with the technology. And I think there's a huge focus on, at the moment, the technology goes in and it gives that data, and it's how we understand that data and put it to good use. And we need that extra support to come from the technology systems as well. But also that goes beyond simply engaging with a landlord and myself in property management. We have a whole supply chain that sits behind that. So a building has M&E contractors which are supporting the kit. The technology is telling us where that can run more efficiently. How do we get an engineer to come up to speed with the technology and work with that? So I think we've got to cast the net wider, and I think that's something that perhaps we as landlords and property managers have to focus on. But also I need to see greater support coming with the technology application. So it doesn't just give me a host of data, it gives me a solution and actually shows that it can then be applied and connected across the different platforms that we're using in the buildings. We're running at the moment, we're looking to digitize our buildings, as I say, and we're very interested in moving to smart building technology. So we're actually running a lot of proof of concepts across our portfolio at the moment, where we're working with numerous members of the supply chain and providers to actually see how those efficiencies run and how we get that interconnectivity between the different systems, so they're not standalone, and it's not relying on somebody who sits as a building manager having to interpret the data and understand how it's used.
Fantastic. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Daniela. And it actually resonates strongly with the question that we have in the Q&A function from James already, who asks if we have a view as to how data will be used most effectively to enhance the office space from the occupier well-being and ESG perspective. So it plays strongly into the subject of tenant engagement and ultimately collecting data and being able to analyze it. Tom, I know that with your solution, you are collecting a lot of data. So if you could maybe take this one on and tell us how technology helps with data and data analytics to enhance their tenant experience in the building.
Yeah, great. So I think now we've realized in this year that it's user-focused or user-centric, and that we're playing a little catch-up to the US and in Asia in terms of data access, right? And I think when it comes to startups, we've played along these rules for long enough to be able to understand how can we capture the best data for what we want. What's interesting is that in the world of PropTech, our metrics are engagement. So what we need to do is engage the users to start using technology in the building. For us in particular, it's so that they use services that are available, in their barrio, so nearby in a 2-kilometer radius. So that's, your local pharmacy, your local opticians, florists, etc. So we record how many services each of these users are ordering to their offices to make them effectively amenity-rich buildings. And then secondly, we're recording how many products enter the building, from, this 1.7 trillion industry that is e-commerce, that, all the orders, when it's products, packages, etc., and how the rest of the world sort of interacts with their building. And also because of this, obviously, we're getting a lot of usage reports. So we know immediately how many people are in the building. We know how active they are, which hours they're working, when they pick up their packages, when they pick up their services, so on and so forth. And the relationship that we've built right now with our clients, so we have over 700 portfolio companies. The two largest real estate listed companies in Europe work with us, and we share data as to how users on an anonymous level obviously are using their building. So how active are they across their portfolios, and how happy are they? So we notice a big difference. Every time somebody uses our service, we ask them how well it's going. We do individual surveys as well. And we share all this information with the client because we make our client happy if we make their users happy. And so I think this is what's really interesting now. And we're starting to get to a level where Europe is understanding that the value in their buildings is the data, but also who owns those users in a sense, right? Who owns that end user? The approach that we've taken has always been universal. So we have an open source system. We connect with every single app and we share all that information. I think that's critical. I think that's the only way to play the game. We're small players in a very large world. And the best way is, that I like to put it, is let me do my job in a sense of let me engage users, but I will share all that data so that you can engage users with your proprietary app or other apps that you'd like to adopt to add more value to your users in your building.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. Very interesting approach. Warrick, from Property Inspect, by doing remote inspections, how do you collect data? What sort of data you collect? How you analyze it? And do you actually, what technologies are you using? Like, is it sensors? What Daniela mentioned earlier, that probably that we should see more sensors used in such solutions, or is it in plans, for example? So if you could help us navigate through that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just a quick touch on Tom's point there about being open and collaborating. I mean, the industry over the last, especially the last 18 months, has seen more open arms to the adoption of working and collaborating with other technology companies and having data importing into open APIs. And I think, to touch on that point, it's very critical that we have this approach to enable us to evolve and to shape technology for the better of our clients and the tenants. In terms of our technology for remote inspections, live inspections, we have an app, and that goes out to our clients and their customers, and they go through a systematic approach of conducting live inspections of the property, whether that be a residential or commercial building, an office, whether that be to do with lease maintenance issues, for whatever reason. We have that technology there that assists to improve tenant engagement and satisfaction with regards to their lease of the property. And the data we collect is more around the compliance areas. So these are issues that crop up that get audited and tracked in our system. So the property manager and or owner can then apportionately account responsibility to the right person to be able to conduct future maintenance tasks, for example. And all this data is then captured on our system in a historical audit trail for documenting and for evidence, for compliance, insurance, and for whatever reason. So all this data gets stored securely in our database, and all this can be looked back over history of the life cycle of the property. And this is very beneficial for all our customers and our tenants to know that they're the properties that they're in, they're fully compliant. They're getting good service in terms of reactive and being proactive to tasks and compliance issues that are happening in the property.
Very interesting, and that make me think that there is a very good question in the Q&A function that I would want us to take next. It is to do with adoption and implementation. So all those wonderful technologies, what are their I'll probably start again with our industry reps. So how do your respective companies engage with outside tech, with the world of startups, and how do you move onto adoption into implementation once you identify good tech? And then Tom, Warrick, from your perspective, I would want to actually hear some tips. What are the right ways to engage with startups? What would you want to see from the industry? So what would you think would have been the most efficient and effective way? So Victoria, perhaps if you could take this on first.
So wide-reaching question. I think it's really useful for technology to work with the real estate industry. I think you've actually really got to get under the skin of what we do and actually understand that there are different aspects of this. So from a landlord perspective and also from a tenant perspective, we're probably coming at it from different drivers, albeit we all want the same end result. One of the biggest challenges that we face when we're dealing with our tenants and our occupiers across the portfolio is, and I know that you touched on it earlier, is around the security of the data and how we're going to use that data, how we're going to make sure that it's either anonymous and sharing, and particularly when we're starting to look at things such as energy usage, which is one of the big areas. And I think that's something, I think if the technology companies could understand that the challenges that the real estate industry is facing in getting to net zero carbon, because it's a huge challenge, and how they can work with us and understand that better. What we don't want to end up with a position is where you are putting out league tables of how your individual tenants are operating against each other, because that's not a good place to be, because some of the smaller businesses that we're working with probably don't have the resource to get to the same levels as some of our larger occupiers. So we don't want to be in a position on the naming and shaming with data, but how do we make it friendly and easier for people to understand? So I think I find I'm not a technical person. I'm a property manager, and I'm using technology to make my life easier, to make my tenants happier, to make my buildings run more efficiently. And I do find that when I'm talking with technology companies, and even we have a digital and innovations technology department in-house, and I have to keep reminding them I'm not technically minded, nor a lot of my occupiers. So we need to break this down and make this easy for people to understand. And that's where you're going to get greater implementation of the technology. People are a bit scared of it, and the security of data is such a huge topic for us right now, and that's probably the biggest blocker that we have in getting people on board in the journey with us, because people are terrified as to what we're going to do with that data.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful. I don't know, I want to break the order a little bit now. So if we can pass this on to Tom first, because Tom, I know your solution does play into net zero carbon goal for many of your users. How do you see, is it easy for you to engage with the real estate industry? Do people in real estate quickly understand the benefits of your net zero proposition? And what other challenges have been? How would you what would you recommend to the real estate to engage more meaningfully?
Yeah, so I'll try to touch on both questions because I think it's pertinent. So when it comes to zero carbon, we started this as an ESG program with Nestle, who obviously have a huge risk area when it comes to delivering something. When you say you're going to do it, you have to do it. So on that side, we learned very quickly on how to guarantee end-to-end zero carbon deliveries for all services. So we'll pick up from a local dry cleaners, or we'll pick up from Nespresso, for which we're an official distributor Europe-wide, and we'll deliver with our electric vans. And then we have to demonstrate that we're offsetting that electricity to reach the zero carbon. So that's one aspect that we cover. And that due diligence, I can tell you, was huge in terms of documentation. We didn't realize what we were getting into. Not only do you have to set that up operationally, but it was almost the same effort to document it. And I think on what it comes down to when we look with portfolio companies, it's not real estate's bread and butter just yet to accommodate all these new innovations. And I think a lot of portfolios are learning to do this with both venture arms and innovation arms. I think my pet peeve is, we've done a lot of pilots. When we're looking at 100 installations across a portfolio, of course, you start with a pilot first. We give administrator rights to a champion that understands, as Victoria was saying, perhaps the more technical side, understands the whole level of the business, so that they can engage with us over which services are ordered and which ones they would like to see there. My pet peeve is when, after 3 months, they go, this was a great, successful pilot. We saw all the data you were sending us. And I go back to the champion, I say, look, you had administrator rights. I've seen you've logged in maybe twice. You haven't actually engaged to try to make this a service that could be totally accommodated to you. You've lost an opportunity to actually mold the startup to your next 100 locations. So we're doing it because we're interested in engaging and adding value to your users. But I think we need to realize that a pilot, it's not to test us, it's for the portfolio to take advantage, to understand whether this is a better solution than any other that they could mold to their necessities. And this is critical because every portfolio understands their users better than any startup could. You've been doing it for years, and you have to call the shots and tell us how it works.
Danielle, if you could respond to that. So how do you engage with pilots? Did you find
duly noted, Tom. I think, to me, that the most successful, kind of marriages of technology and property are those that create a win-win both for the landlord and the resident. So kind of spinning off of some of the carbon zero and kind of creating those efficiencies. I'll speak to I think a good example of that. We started out with a proposition that included utilities with your rent, and what we found over time was that there was no incentive in there for the residents to control their usage and to monitor kind of and make those efforts to reduce their consumption of different utilities, water and electricity and those types of things. And so we ended up eventually unbundling, and what has allowed us, I think, to do that effectively is technology, because it's in the apartments. Residents can watch their consumption. We created a resident portal where they can watch their consumption so that they can measure it against prior months and against kind of average thresholds, and giving them the power to kind of control their own billing every month. And I think it's been, again, just kind of one of those really powerful examples of how technology serves both the landlord and the resident, and becomes quite successful that way.
Amazing, thank you. Warrick, do you have any tips how to shorten this disconnect between adoption and implementation for the real estate industry, and how real estate industry could engage with startups more efficiently?
I think it's very, very key for that adoption of technology is just crucial for the growth of real estate, right? To make more processes more streamlined, more efficient, which is a knock-on effect for both the company, the property manager, and the tenants. And I think it's important that property managers and companies and alike are open-minded to change and are proactive to tenant behaviour and embracing new tools will make their lives easier, and of course the lives of their tenants better. In terms of, from our experience, we understand from a technology software architect, if you like, we're working with, governments and municipalities and in both globally, and we understand that not all have technological savvy, right? And we understand that they don't have big departments with digitization to implement, this software. So there has to be, from our point of view as a software supplier, there has to be some give and take and supportive aspects to help implement new software into these companies. And I think that's a big take on approach for suppliers. They have to make sure that they can support their customers and help them implement this new change in this new software that's going to have a impact to their business. And I think from my perspective, for tips and how we can more collaborate and be open, is to listen to our peers and professionals in the industry. There's been a rise in new software solution providers over the last 18 months that offer businesses the very best and latest in software that has been vetted and approved. These kind of consultative marketplaces, if you like, are service providers that offer more of a consultative approach to finding the right solution, and they will help kind of find the best way to implement that software into the company. These are effectively a go-to trusted source, or a company that has experience in implementing new solutions into businesses and have vast experience in implementing new software and networking PropTech that understands how these solutions can best be streamlined.
Thank you. I would like us to move their discussion now into the business of today. So we all do expect tenants coming back to office buildings in the next, in foreseeable future. And we all cannot help but wonder to understand what changes are going to be made to the way how people interact with space. And office and residential real estate is probably nowadays closer than ever to in terms of use cases. So we all are now more and more used to using our residential space as offices, and more and more people are talking about flexible working, like we come back to the office a certain number of days a week, and then we work from home for the remaining week. How do you see, Victoria, Daniela, how your tenants' behavior change, and what do you expect in terms of the way they interact with office and residential space? And as such, what do you anticipate be again the need for technology when it comes to adapting to this new environment? Victoria, if we could start with you again as an office rep here.
Okay, that's the big question, right? How is the office going to look post-pandemic? Truthfully, I think it's too early to give you a definitive answer on that. I think, yes, it's going to change. There's still going to be a requirement for the office. So I would strongly disagree with, the media releases that say that the office is non-existent and everybody will permanently at home. I think the feedback that we get across the board now from our occupier base is there's a real desire to return to the office. Maybe that will be more of a space of collaboration for people, as opposed to what we now know as the traditional 9 to 5 working. I think that's gone. There's going to be more flexibility around that, and maybe buildings will become more 24 hours as people choose different hours to work. We don't know is the honest answer what it's going to look like. I don't think our occupiers know at the moment. We're in that kind of limbo period where people are now assessing what's happening with lockdown restrictions ending. They're speaking with all their employees as to what they want, and there's going to be a hybrid model here. Technology is going to play into this in terms of the sensors, which I think we've already talked about, because I think getting an actual understanding of how people are using the space, how many people are coming through, even down from an operational perspective, people want to know that the environment they're coming into is safe and clean. So, air quality sensors, if I have sensors around my WC facilities and my shower changing facilities, and I know how they're being used, I know how to adopt my cleaning regimes around that. So I'm giving people real sense of security to know that they're walking into as clean an environment as we can possibly provide in an office space. Knowing how people are using the space and interacting, we know whether we need to provide more circulation space. Do people need more offices? When I say offices, I mean around meeting, collaboration, and breakout. And I think that's what we're hearing from our tenants is that meeting rooms are in high demand. Or this is the assumption. Technology is going to give us the data, which is actually going to give us the answers to this, right? And then when we're looking at tenant apps and portals, when we're in that hybrid and people are removed from the office space, we're going to need technology to actually tie everybody back together. Because I think one of the big things that's come out of the pandemic is people have enjoyed having the flexibility and working from home, but they felt very distant and disconnected from their colleagues. We've all had Zoom and team calls and but it isn't the same. So we need something which actually pulls that community back together. And technology is going to deliver that for us.
Yeah, I personally cannot agree more, Victoria. We need this human interaction back. Daniela, how did that change behavior of your tenants? How do tenants now engage with residential, and do you see some permanent changes there?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to start with just supporting, I think, exactly what Victoria just said. As an employer, I can tell you that, lots of team are super excited to get back, but I think everyone is still looking for that flexibility. As we're hiring, we're being asked, as an employer, will we support, kind of flexible working schedules and things of that nature. So I do think part of, what we've seen over the last year is that we can still be effective, working from home in a lot of situations. And I do think, or I guess my suspicion is that some sort of flexibility for kind of a part-time work from home / work from the office schedule is what will kind of come out of this. But I suppose we'll all see how it fleshes out in the end. But that I do agree with Victoria 100%. I think that's directionally it feels like where we're headed. As an operator and from a resident's perspective, I think what we've seen is that, a lot of the amenity spaces that we would typically see used for, quite social engagements are now being kind of converted. And so we, from both a technology perspective, but also just a, operator's perspective, have kind of carved out some work from home space in all of those lounges and, kind of social space areas. Not only did it allow us to keep it open, but we gave that resident the flexibility of not having to look at the same four walls all day as they were working from home. And oddly, I feel like as I walk around and I look at the social spaces, I think they're being used more than ever, just for maybe a slightly different purpose from what they were originally intended. And from a technology perspective, we were supported in that, and all of that was made possible through, I think I mentioned earlier, we have a resident app that allows people to book those social spaces. And while we were required to, book gym appointments and things like that when we had to manage, kind of density and usage through the pandemic. And so technology really facilitated our ability to serve the residents and, give them kind of what they were looking for through the pandemic. And again, I just don't think that's something that's changing. In fact, a lot of what we've seen over the last 12 months has really informed us from a future design perspective and ensuring that we have individual rooms, meeting rooms, to Victoria's point, literally designated kind of work from home spaces, as well as convertible lounge spaces in the event that we have the need as well. And then I would say, and the other thing would be just packages. Tom, I'm sure can support me in this, but the massive increase we've seen in packages through the pandemic has really made us look at, what technology solutions can help us with that. It was already becoming a bit of a problem before the pandemic, but it's just got, exponentially, kind of more overwhelming. So moving to kind of fully automated CCTV covered, package rooms, which, allows our team to focus on, things that are more critical and allows residents to have 24-hour self-serve access to their packages without having to wait for concierge. So again, just a couple of examples where I think technology has allowed us to serve our customer better.
Thank you, Daniela. This is an awesome bridge to my question for Tom and Warrick, because I wonder how you see their change in balance when it comes to real estate industry demand for your products. So what sort of space was more in demand of your services before pandemic and versus today? Tom, if you could start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, March 2020 or April 2020, when it came to offices, it was a crash, right? It went from that 100% occupancy down to 30% in the matter of a couple of months. Right? So what we've seen, however, is residential and hospitals and many others, the usage has gone up. What's interesting about offices is the usage per user has actually increased faster than those areas because they're learning to use it slightly differently. We've talked about this midway between being more at home and then being more in the office. What our users are experiencing is that that's a more complex life because you don't know where you're going to be. Sometimes you're going to be on the office, sometimes you're going to be here. And so this life-work balance is harder to manage. So they're using our system more to be able to guarantee, well, I can do all my services and I can pick up all my packages. I don't have to do those extra things in between work or home. So I can, delegate some things to the technology. And just to answer as a whole, A year ago, the visionary Steve Wozniak said, everybody's going back to offices because the big employers want control. However, as Danielle was saying, we're learning that, we can give that a little leeway to users or our employees, because we can see that they are working those Thursdays and Fridays, that they do have the technology to do the calls, so on and so forth. So I think home is becoming that second office to some extent, if maybe just for a fourth or a fifth of our week.
Thank you, Tom. Warrick, when it comes to inspections, presumably now more than ever, remote inspections are in higher demand, because you don't want, if you are spending more and more time at home, then with all the COVID risks and just generally as a distraction, you wouldn't want to have a third party person coming in. So, but that's my common sense assumption. How do you see the change from your perspective? For how is the demand changing for your product, starting from offices and all the way through to residential?
It's an interesting point. Thank you, Vanessa. The environment that we're in and the situations that we face ourselves in help us adapt and change and evolve technology, and in most cases for the better, right? So for our example, when we go back to look at live inspections and self-service assessments, this gave the opportunity and the ability to put the technology into the hands of our customers that really need it at the right time to be able to continue at least some normality with regards to their work. When the estate agents, need to get out to properties but can't, we gave them the tools and the accessibility to be able to do this in a compliant, effective way that's documented. But I think interestingly about the going into offices, right? So we all crave that human interaction. It's in us, right? And I feel that we will go back to the office, but certainly technology has helped us to realise, and again looking at data, has helped us realise that actually productivity can be still increased and still installed into employees regardless of where they're working. And the same aspects goes for the technology that's used to carry out inspections on these properties, using live inspections to remotely conduct an inspection from any device anywhere, goes back to that earlier point about reducing the ESG, reducing the carbon and reducing the emissions, and not necessarily needed to go out for a call out just to diagnose a maintenance issue. All this technology is really kind of evolving and helping the industry move in the right direction with open arms. And again, to go back to Daniela's point, no one knows where the industry is going to go, whether it's going to go back to full-time, whether it's part-time, but at least I think the most important thing is we are open to change and open minds to using technology for the better for both companies and tenants alike.
Thank you, Warrick. And that makes me think that, and well, there is actually a question in our Q&A function, which I don't want to see ignored, though. The thinking behind is COVID, of course, accelerated adoption because certain technology needs were just here and now, and those there were pain points that needed to be addressed, and there was no other way around. So as Thomas is saying, the occupancy in office space dropped significantly and overnight, and then we saw increased use of residential space for as office, and that also needed to be addressed immediately. So that's good news for tech people out there. But at the same time, there is still a question: what if there is no pandemic? What if there benefits of PropTech solution are more long-term benefits? And that's the question which I'm going to read from the screen from the audience. What are the best ways to challenge stakeholders who simply look at the short-term implementation costs of PropTech solutions and do not give enough weight to the longer-term benefits? Victoria, you mentioned before that it's sometimes difficult for real estate to understand tech unless it is explained in real estate language. So presumably that's one way. But however, even if it's explained in real estate language, if the benefits are going to be seen in longer term, how to break through, how our real estate technology world can be heard sooner than having pandemic to trigger reaction.
No, I mean, I think we live in a world where our occupiers are a lot more well-informed these days than perhaps previously. So we're almost being challenged by the people who are occupying our space, and rightly so. And we've got to respond to that, in real estate. And I can only speak from my perspective and working with Derwent London. We are completely bought into, driving forward technology and smart buildings. And I think if we don't provide this as a product, we're going to get, particularly in the commercial realm, we're going to get very quickly left behind. It's about, I think, user experience, that customer-centric piece. Technology is really going to help deliver that. Efficiencies, management of building, intelligent information and data. And I think the industry is educating itself, and I think it's been led by, yes, the tech solutions are coming through. I think people are, the tech companies are now better at understanding the real estate industry, and we are very slow historically to turn around. And I think, we've got their senior management are now buying into it and seeing the benefit, which is absolutely key in making this successful. But ultimately, it comes down to the people using the space and our occupiers, and they're demanding it. I mean, there isn't any area of your life personally where you're not interacting with technology, right? You're never without your smartphone. And everybody is so used to using digital in everything that we do. That's got to translate back into the office space, and I don't think we have any choice but to deliver on it. And the tech companies have simply just got to make it accessible, particularly for, in the building realm, and building managers and engineers and property managers, make it accessible and hold their hand through the process. It goes back to a point I think Tom made earlier on over pilots, and how you run the pilots and everyone says fantastic, but then we don't move forwards with it. And that comes back to the person that's sitting there actually not understanding how to use that data. Data is absolutely king here. It's just knowing how to use it for the best. And I think it's got to be a collaboration. It can't be just, the tech partners giving us a service and saying, off you go, there we go, we sold you your software. We have to work in collaboration and tandem together to make this work.
Thank you, Victoria. I personally cannot agree more, and that's inspiring and fascinating to hear that from you. Daniela, what do you think? What are the right ways for the longer term solutions to be heard and seen?
I 100% agree with Victoria. She literally took the words out of my mouth. Like, hold our hand through the process, show me, what's possible, and don't give up on us. Don't just kind of cut us loose and go, okay, have fun, right? And not that that's what always happens, but there are times when I think, pilots fail because we don't have enough invested users on our side who understand it well enough to kind of be the support for the pilot that it needs to the stakeholders, right, to the people who are making those decisions. And if we don't understand it well enough, then we're not going to be able to convince kind of the buyers, the stakeholders, that it's the right decision. So hold our hands, kind of make sure we understand, what those benefits are, and then in some cases, understanding that if something is too long-term a payout or payoff, that it's probably not a solution for every buyer. If I'm a short-term hold, right, if I'm not someone who's going to hold on to my properties, for a long period of time, I'm probably not your customer if it's too long of a of a kind of payout. So making sure, we kind of understand each other, right? What's a right fit and what isn't for something of that nature. Yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. That's fantastic. So I'm just going to move slowly to a quick summary of a discussion, and then we'll ask every panelist one final question, which is going to be whether, based on this discussion of today, whether we feel technology is there to serve real estate better. And so what we learned today is real estate becoming more and more tenant-centric. Real estate operators and managers are more and more challenged by their occupiers. Real estate is looking at technology solutions, trying to look for data-driven solutions where data can be effectively surveyed from their tenant base and then analyzed and distilled to some action points, how the relationship between occupiers and the landlords can be improved. However, technology and tech startups are asked to speak real estate language, not difficult tech language, so that it can be understood in terms of direct benefits for landlords. And in terms of space use, it appears it's still too early to say. However, some rebalancing does occur. So in residential real estate, we see more space being allocated for office work, so to speak. And then in office space, we see more and more meeting rooms being utilized for collaboration. So that is interesting. So and by the sound of it, those changes are there to stay. So for any final remarks, let's start with our tech experts. Toma, if I may start with you. So how do you see, can real estate be even better served by technology in the next foreseeable future?
Right, so I'll challenge this short-termist and also long-termist view. You know, we're a 300 billion euro industry. We work on these cycles up and down. We you know, even on long-term basis. I think it escapes our mind to think about all the other products and services, all the other things that are happening outside buildings, especially considering that 80% of our time is spent in buildings. If I turn back to the solution that we have behind me, and I haven't done a quick demo, but I will take this minute to do that. But essentially our AI allows any user to come up here, select coffee capsules, for example. This AI will load up all the coffee options that are available in a 2-kilometer radius. I can select it, purchase it, finish, put in my phone number so it knows who I am. And that will be delivered in 24 hours to this place. Now, what's happened here is I've taken all the value of my city, all the different products and services, and brought it inside the building. And there's immediate value for people who are looking to buy a residence that has a smart point, because they can showcase this as a smart building. And there's long-term benefits to that portfolio, which are adding more engagement and more value to their users as a whole.
Thank you, Tom. Warrick, literally 15, 20 seconds, final remarks.
I'll have 2 sugars, please, Tom. To be honest, I think to raise to Danielle's point is that it's just, you know, we need to work with our customers as much as vice versa, right? You know, we're evolving as our customers are. We will work with them to, you know, get the best outcome, the best solution. And we're still learning and evolving how we adapt our technology. So, you know, we still go through the journey and see that as an opportunity to learn with the customers. There's many times that can happen. So it's just a case of being open-minded and working with both parties, really. Thank you,
Warrick. Daniela, any final remarks?
First, I want to find out how quickly Tom can install that in my living room. That's brilliant. I love that. But yeah, I think, you know, I absolutely think technology is a huge part of our future. I think, to Victoria's point earlier, I think our residents expect it, they want it. You know, they will pay for it, you know, in a lot of cases. And so making smart decisions about how we, you know, kind of absorb that into our propositions and how we incorporate that into our, you know, future buildings and future development and things like that will be really important. But I also think making sure that it's user friendly and it's, you know, both for the end user and the client, right? Like, I have to be able to explain it to my residents to make sure they can, you know, be able to use it. And so, you know, partnering on making sure, you know, that technology actually serves, you know, the widest kind of pool of our customers as possible. But I think technology is a huge part of our way forward, and finding efficiencies, getting to that ever elusive gross to net that everyone's looking for, and, you know, yeah, you know, kind of plowing our way into the future.
Thank you, Daniela. Victoria, last but not least, any final remarks here?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's important for us, you know, our goal is to be delivering with purpose, and we're never going to adopt tech just for the sake of adopting tech. There's going to have to be tangible benefit and a purpose to it. But we're looking at it from both sides, from us as a landlord and also from our stakeholders and our occupiers. So whether it's user experience or the delivery and management of our buildings, we're always looking to improve and move things forwards. Technology is going to give us the intelligent information and the data, which means that we can work with our customers more cohesively. And there's a mutual benefit there for us to be adapting and changing more quickly and improving our user experience. Technology is going to support us in our ambition to deliver best-in-class and more sustainable working environments ultimately. And if we get the right product and the right service, then that's when we're going to start creating some real value in the portfolio.
Thank you. Thank you for each and every one of you on the panel, and for everyone in as our attendees today, because yes, we are a couple of minutes past, but I can see that there is still the majority of attendees are still with us. That was a fantastic discussion. I enjoyed it a lot and hope every one of you did so as well. I'm thanking British Property Federation for helping us to pull that together. And I'm looking forward to future sessions and future events and recapping with all of you in a few months' time, perhaps, to see how things have changed and will have changed. Thank you, everyone.